Good morning, and welcome to Lesson 24 and Chapter 18 in our study of the book of Judges. Now, in the previous chapter, it really showed how individuals turned away from the ordinances of God and became idolaters. They showed how they developed their own type of religion and how they worshipped idols, and how this affected individuals and their relationship even within families. This chapter deals primarily with the nation itself, or the tribe of Dan in particular, and how the whole tribe, the whole nation, started to follow idols and turn away from the ordinances of God. This is primarily about the tribe of Dan, which was the tribe of Samson. And if you go back to Genesis chapter 49, it says in verse 16 and 17, this was a prophecy that Jacob had given to his sons. And we're familiar with the prophecy also that he gave to Judah, and the scepter being removed from Judah. But this is the prophecy he gave to Dan. He said, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels, so that its rider shall fall backwards. It was prophesying that Dan would lead his people astray. And this is what this chapter deals with, because Dan, the tribe of Dan, was given an allotment of land after they entered the promised land, an allotment of land, but they did not subdue it. They did not subdue the people there. And it said in the very first chapter of this book that the Amorites drove the people of Dan into the hills. And this is where this starts off, because it says Dan had no real inheritance for itself to dwell in the first part of chapter 18. So they went into the hills. They sent 5 men of their family into the hills to search out land. And when they did this, they came upon the person that we met in the previous chapter, the house of Micah. They recognized the young Levite that was there, the so-called priest who was there, priest for hire, and they recognized him, and they asked him what he was doing there. And they asked for his blessing. Now, even though he was sort of a rogue priest, a rogue Levite, really not in tune with God, he still said that go in peace, the presence of the Lord be with you. So they went and departed and searched out the land that they saw, much as Caleb and Joshua did in the days of Joshua. And this, however, was not under God's blessing, of where the spies that Joshua sent into the promised land to search it out before were under the blessings of God. So anyway, they went and found this land, found it very good, and they came back from seeing that back to their brethren and told them that the report was good. So it says, for we have seen the land, and indeed it is very good. Would you do nothing? So enter and possess the land. So 600 of the men of Dan went into the land and went back to the house of Micah on the way, after being told about the idols that Micah had there, and they essentially took the idols with themselves. Micah eventually went after them, but found they were too strong for him, so left. He went after to rescue the idols, rescue his gods. Now, if you think about it, a god that needs to be rescued by the people is really not much of a god who's able to rescue and save you. But this is what the people were worshiping, were these idols. The people of Dan were told in a prophecy that they would be idolaters. And it shows over in 1 Kings chapter 12. It says, verse 24, Therefore the king asked advice, made 2 calves of gold, and said to the people, "It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, which brought you up from the land of Egypt." And he set one up in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. Now this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one as far as Dan. He made shrines in the high places, and made priests from every class of people who were not of the sons of Levi. This is just a continuation of what was going on here when Dan itself took these idols from Micah and took the rogue Levite priest with them, because they offered this priest more money, apparently, and more prestige than Micah had. So this is the whole story of chapter 18, primarily, that this tribe sent spies to search out this other land up in the hills. They came across this house of Micah with the idols and with his shrine. They convinced the rogue priest to go with them, and when they came back with more men, they took the idols themselves from Micah, who then took some people to try to get his idols back. And he said in verse 24, "So he said, you have taken away my gods which I made, and the priest, and you have gone away. Now what more do I have? How can you say to me, what ails you?" And the children of Dan said to him, "Do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry men fall upon you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household." Then the children of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they had too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. They took the things Micah had, and they went to Laish, to a people who, as they said there, were quiet and secure. Now, Charles Spurgeon, in his sermon about carnal idols, said this. He said, "The dangers of carnal security, of being so secure in what you think yourself, in being so secure in what you feel is right yourself, with no concern for someone else." Said there were 4 issues here, and this is what affected the people of Laish. He said, 1, that this carnal security makes you feel free from internal struggles. There's nothing to really worry about, because everybody does what's right in their own mind. So there's no struggle. There's no concern about what is right and what is wrong. You're free from internal struggles and conflicts. You're free from rulers as a governance of conscience. There's nothing over you. There's no God over you. There's no one over you to tell you that what you are doing is right or is not right according to your own conscience. Your conscience tells you whatever is right is fine. That people are also free from concerns for other people. If what you do is right and all you're concerned about is what you do, then you're free from the concerns of other people. And the 4th thing is that you're free from the fear of invasion, because who would want to invade you? You're quiet, you're secure, you're free. Who would want to anyone hurt you? And this is what happened to the people of Laish, because they were quiet and secure. So the people of Dan struck them with the sword and conquered them, and renamed their city the city of Dan. So the children of Dan set up for themselves the carved image, and Jonathan the son of Gershon, the son of Manasseh, and some people say it's the son of Moses, and his sons were priests for the tribe of Dan until the day of the captivity of the land. This is what it says in Kings. They set up priests from other tribes other than the Levites. Everyone could become a priest. Everyone could worship these idols. Rather than going to Jerusalem to the temple, they could worship the idols anywhere. And it says, until the day of the captivity of the land. So they set up this for themselves, Micah's carved image, which he made all the time that the house of God was in Shiloh. So they set up this alternate religion. as it was said in the prophecy in Genesis that he would be an idolater, someone who would lead his people astray. This is what was happening now in the tribe of Dan, and what was represented again in 1 Kings. This whole story is really one which shows how the nation of Israel, represented by the tribe of Dan, had fallen away from what God had wanted them to be and wanted them to do. They had fallen away from his commandments, from his ordinances, and they did everything, as it said, what was right in their own hearts and their own minds, because there was no king in Israel. There was no one over them. And this shows the idea of how far the nation of Israel had fallen, and why the judges would be brought in and sometimes bring them back to what they should be doing, and for a while they would prosper until they fell away again into the same old routine. A person who is a priest and Levite should be someone who is blameless, who has good character, has good morality, and who follows what God wants him to do. He should not be there just for the money or for the prestige, but he should be there for the real purpose that he should be there for, and that is to follow and to honor God. The Levite priest was an example of how far the ministry in those days, the priesthood in that days, had fallen, where many people like himself, many people who were not Levites, who were still called priests, did their duties for the purpose of money and for the purpose of their own prestige. It shows how far the tribe of Dan had fallen. They became idolaters. They didn't follow the real God anymore. They kept following idols. It shows how far the people under Micah had fallen, who set up shrines in their own house and worshipped the idols which they made, and then had to go and try and rescue themselves. What good is a God who you make and who you need to rescue? But this is what many people worship today, the gods of their own makings. Not the God of the Bible, but gods that they make themselves. And as God turned away from the people of Israel during these times, perhaps we should consider if he's turning away from us today, because of the fact that we've turned away from his ordinances and what he wants us to do and what he wants us to be. This whole book of Judges shows the problems that people develop for themselves when they try to do things their own way, when they try to make things their own way, when they try to make gods in their image rather than transforming themselves to the image God wants them to be. This is the whole purpose of this book, is to show how far people have in the past fallen and the problems they've gotten themselves into as a result of that fall. It's a book which is very apropos to today's situations and the history and the situation of today as we go through it. Because most people have turned away from God again. We do what we think is right, what seems right to us. But it says in Proverbs, what is right, what seems right to the heart of man, often is a way of death. And this is exactly what is happening, or appears to be happening in the world today. This chapter shows how a whole tribe went away from God's ordinances, became idolatrous, how they went after a small, peaceful people who were themselves too complacent and probably just inwardly secure in their own being rather than what God wanted them to be. But how this tribe was overtaken by the tribe of Dan. Their cities were taken, and then the tribe of Dan set up idols in the place of this new city. As it said in Kings, they set up this idols and made anybody priests. This is not what God asked for in the first place. He said in Deuteronomy to choose between blessings and curses. If you do what he asked to do, if you followed his commandments, then you'd be blessed. You'll be blessed in your crops, be blessed in your lives, be blessed in your nation. But if you do not follow his commandments, then there will be curses. And just the opposite from blessings will happen to those people in those nations. This is what happened to the people of Israel during the time of the judges. They turned away from God's commandments, they turned away from what God wanted, and as a result, they ended up in trouble in many, many times. So this chapter shows how the tribe of Dan, representing the nation of Israel, really turned away from God and really had problems as they set up idols of their own. And it shows how this represented Israel the same way Micah represented the individuals in the previous chapter. We're getting to the end of this book, and it shows continually how this process evolves. Next week we're going to do chapter 19 and some of 20, and then the following week we'll probably finish the book. Anyway, I hope you'll join me next week as we continue in this book of Judges and in the study of the people that fell away from God's laws and his love. This is all for today, however. Thanks for watching. Hope you join me next week. Bye for now.